House prices in free fall. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heiser here and welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. Grab your stein of coffee because we have another article, again discussing about house prices falling. And this time, $50,000 drop from Yahoo. So house prices in a record free fall. Now we just have to remember, we're going to see big falls because everyone FOMO'd in during the pandemic and we had insane house price growth. So we're coming off a peak, everyone. Just keep that in mind the more of these articles that you see. Because there are going to be some people that are constantly seeing articles about housing falling, housing falling, housing falling. I mean, would that be enough to drive someone to to sell irrationally? Surely not in property, but then people are doing it all the time in shares, aren't they? And in crypto. So you just have to take a step back and have a longer time frame. You'd expect in property, it's such a pain in the ass to liquidate and move around. People will be holding it for long periods. You'd expect. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Canberra house prices dropped at their fastest rate on record for the September quarter following rising interest rates. House prices dropped 4% over the quarter across the combined capital cities, wiping almost 43,000 off the median sale price, Domain's latest house price report found. Now, this will impact people who FOMO'd in, who believed the bullshit, who believed the hype, who believed that interest rates were never going to go up until 2024 for some reason, and borrowed too much. Some of them are going to get trapped where they can't refinance, and hopefully they'll do what they can if it's a home to hold on to it. Investors, well, they're investors. That's different. That's a business. They can handle it. You'd hope. Most of them have the capability to handle it. But then again, you hear all the horror stories of some nincompoop buying 5 properties, cash only, interest only. Putting everything into it. Houses are now 4.9% below their peak price in March this year, a loss of more than $50,000. It's only a loss if you sell at that loss. Many borrowers and potential home buyers will have never experienced anything like this before, and justifiably, it has had a significant impact on consumer sentiment, Domain Chief of Research and Economics, Dr. Nicola Powell said. Well, yeah, she's right. I was talking to my Steely the other day about the recession. He was born in the last recession in the 1980s. So there's a whole generation of people who are working, who are out there, who their first and only experience of a recession was the one we just had, which was a joke. They don't remember the one in the 80s, the recession we had to have. And I was a child, but my father was a builder. So let's just say I felt the recession as a child, probably a magnified fear and anxiety from it. And we moved to Queensland. We were those Mexicans that moved up to Queensland that everyone's complaining about. Oh, the weather was great though. I remember we were meant to go to the beach every day. Oh shit! Now I'm a real Queensland. It's too bloody cold. And they had this thing up here called rugby. It's where they don't know how to kick the AFL football and they just run into each other. It's strange. It's odd. If you don't know, there's 2 codes of football here in Australia. You've got rugby and you've got AFL. And AFL was huge in Victoria, still is. And as a kid in the 80s, I did not even know what rugby was. It didn't exist, wasn't on the TV, wasn't played at school, no one talked about it. AFL everywhere. The rapid rise in interest rates, which have increased at their fastest rate since 94, are named as the main cause for the housing downturn. So inability for people to borrow, hoover up all those big loans. Because the loans are getting up there, guys. We're seeing 6-7% interest rates for some of these loans. So you got to, if you're locked in at a low rate, hopefully it'll come down before you're freed of that low rate, fantasy. Interest rates and surging inflation have also weakened the borrowing power of prospective buyers. Interest rate hikes and strong inflation levels have damaged borrowing capacity and increased home loan costs, adding an additional $1,482 a month to a $1 million home loan, Powell said. Now, $1 million, that's certainly above it will be double the average mortgage in Australia, but that counts all of us oldies that got a home when it wasn't so insane. But $1 million for someone as a first home, it's not unheard of. It seems insane that I'm saying that, but it's not unheard of. What has that got to do to your quality of life? Just think about that, No wonder Labor is putting forward 26 weeks of maternity leave. It's the only chance some mothers are ever going to have to spend time with their kids, because they've got to go right back to work to keep paying for their bloody mortgage for their bog standard specky. We need to get more housing stock, and it needs to be cheaper to build. Today's high household debt heightens the vulnerability of households to rising interest rates that could exacerbate a downturn. So 2022 predictions, what will happen to these house prices? Well, we are pretty much, 2022 is over. Here's what the experts are predicting for property prices in 2022. At the same time, supply of housing has normalized from its low and is now 10% higher than last year across the capitals. This provides home buyers greater choice. Yep, Domain says. Prices are expected to continue to fall further, with rising interest rates continuing to put pressure on the housing market. Well, here's the thing. We're coming off a peak. Let's look at the capital city asking prices. Here, let's refresh this. There you go. Okay. This is all the capitals together from SQM. Their asking prices. You see they're starting to trickle down a little bit. But look at that increase, guys. Look at that increase. So when they're saying property prices are going to fall 20%, think about how far back in time to asking prices are we going? Are we going to get to 2010 prices? So three-bed house, 600 grand. Or all combined houses, 600 grand. Okay? That would be going down from 900,000. That'd be a significant correction. These prices here would be quite affordable to a lot of people. That would be a big fall. That would be what would make a lot of people happy that they've waited. Can you see that happening without government intervention? We've got interventionist political institutions here in Australia. You've got both sides, the two major parties, willing to sacrifice future generations to keep the status quo going. You don't really have a populace that wants a free market. So how much have property prices dropped? Sydney, 5.2, Melbourne, 4.3, Brisbane, Adelaide, Canberra, everything's down a little tiny bit. But look at these prices. $1 million, 1.4, 800 grand. In Brisbane, 800 grand. Adelaide, pretty much 800 grand. Canberra, 1.1 million. Perth, 645. Hobart, 741,000. I remember when I was down in Hobart and Lonnie as a student, I was jealous of how cheap the houses are. Now look at them. And the income level in Tasmania isn't the same as the mainland. So they're screwed too. So let's have a talk about this guy. So, we're going to see more and more of these. We're coming off a property price peak and interest rates are increasing. So people's borrowing capacity is going to go down. Is this going to be the great, huge crash that many people are waiting for? The 40% that the RBA predicted. Now they're talking about a 30% correction in house prices. What the RBA does is they model these scenarios to look at the impacts of other aspects, the banking system pretty much, to make sure it's all going to be ridgy-dig and keep running. And then the media leaps onto that, perhaps putting my conspiratorial hat on there to unknowingly or intentionally influence our politicians to ensure stimulus is provided for those sectors. Because people want stability here in Australia. We want stability. We want it to be nice and boring. They don't want the excitement of a free market here. I think we all can agree to that now. So, if you're holding on the sidelines waiting for a huge, super big correction where you get a house at half price, good luck to you. I can't see it happening here in Australia. I can't see our political establishment not intervening to mitigate that. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's bullshit that a house, in Australia is costing this much. But you've got to look at all the things that are going together to drive up those prices. You've got intentionally limiting supply. You've got land with significant headworks costs. Just trying to slice a normal block in half. You've got all these bloody charges and bullshit. You've got more onerous requirements just on typical bog standard construction every year. You've got pushers that are driving up the costs of our buildings, which they're in place to mitigate the carbon impact of our construction industry, which globally is going to make no impact at all, but will drive up the cost of living, will force generations of Australians, and we're seeing that now, to take on greater and greater debt to get into these houses, and which is reducing the quality of life for a lot of people. What's more important, global virtue signalling or the quality of life of the average Aussie? I'd argue the quality of life of the average Aussie. But that seems to be a minority position. All the talk for lower housing and more affordable housing. What's the solution? Institutional ownership. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. It's getting frustrating. As always, thanks for watching. Check out my other channels, Heiser Bim and Heiser Says International. And if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can. Financially on YouTube or Patreon, using our referral links, buying our merch, or calling us if you need an architect. Take care, guys. Have a great day. And I'll see you in the next episode of Heiser Says. Bye for now.